The trial last week of former Queensland Minister Gordon Nuttall brought the issue of political corruption into the spotlight once again. Nuttall is the 8th Queensland politician to be put behind bars in the last 2 decades.
Professor Adam Graycar is the Dean of the School of Criminal Justice at Rutgers University in New Jersey in the United States, and he's an expert on corruption. He's in Australia as a visiting professor at the US Studies Centre, and he joins us now from Sydney. Adam Graycar, good morning and thank you for joining us.
Good morning to you.
Is there something particular in Queensland that leads all this to happen?
Queensland's had a long and terrible history of corruption, but in recent years they've been able to deal with the issue head-on. Corruption's an interesting phenomenon because some places are just more corrupt than others, and what we've seen with this prosecution and with others is that we can do something about it and we can tackle it head-on.
But I thought after Fitzgerald that systemic corruption, that idea that you mentioned that some places are simply more corrupt than others, had pretty much been put to bed.
Well, certainly the culture has changed enormously. The sorts of corrupt activities that we'd seen in Australia, in Queensland, in New South Wales in the 1970s, in Western Australia a little later, where the culture was there, where conflict of interest didn't matter, where money could go into politicians' bank accounts, where they could get shares, where all these things happened. You know, these things don't happen much. We do have this aberration, we do have this issue. There are a number of things that have happened. Many states, New South Wales, Queensland, Western Australia, for example, have corruption commissions. They're called different things, but they're vigilant. The media is vigilant. The leadership says this is no longer acceptable. This is an enormous contrast to what we had in the Bjelke-Petersen days or the Askin days in New South Wales, or what we have in the United States.
Is there a certain kind of personality that's susceptible to corruption?
Well, corruption essentially follows opportunity, and people...
But there's always opportunity.
There's always opportunity, and most people have an ethical standard that says, I'm here to do my job, not to rip the system off. Corruption, essentially, if you want to define it, it's about misusing an official position, misusing trust, for personal gain. And in Singapore, for example, they have an anti-corruption commission. They pay their public servants and their politicians very large amounts of money, and there is absolute zero tolerance if you stray beyond that line. There are bizarre experiences here. To think that somebody could get this amount of money paid into their bank account every month or whatever without it being noticed, without it being made transparent, it really shows that the culture isn't quite right.
That's right, and I want to get to a bit more on the culture in a moment, but can I pin you down on that? I mean, it seems to me that if you're going to get that sort of money paid into your bank account every month, you have to believe that you deserve it. Do you have to have a personality that involves a sense of entitlement in order to be prone towards corruption?
It's very interesting when you look at what is deserved and what isn't. Many people who work in the public sector feel they work very hard, they get paid relatively little, they make enormous decisions, and they're in a position to do favours for other people. Most people get their salary and do their job diligently. What we see is this very rare occurrence when it is prosecuted, and it shows that somebody figures that he or she is above the law and is owed more than the community says they're owed.
Well then let's talk about that issue of the culture. Does something need to be missing from the top in order for corruption to flourish?
The leadership is the most important thing. There was a very interesting example almost 40 years ago. Comalco, the aluminium company, decided to offer shares before they were listed to a number of politicians. The then Prime Minister, John Gorton, said no, he wouldn't take them and told his ministers not to. But other premiers, Askin in New South Wales, Bjelke-Petersen, said it was fine for their ministers to take these shares. Now, this couldn't happen today. I think every state premier is under scrutiny. The media is very, very vigilant. Anti-corruption commissions are there. Police services are there. And if a premier today were to take a bunch of shares just for being premier, you guys would be onto him in no time. it's just no longer acceptable. And when we look at the international league tables, Transparency International ranks countries.
Oh, yes.
The countries that are the least corrupt have cultures that say when you're in public service, you're there to serve the public. The countries that are most corrupt say when you go into politics, you do it so you can get on the take.
Professor, very quickly, we have very little time left. What do you think is the key institution that a country needs to have in place to prevent corruption?
Good leadership and ethical leadership. We do have anti-corruption agencies, but it's the leadership and it's the ethics behind the leadership and the acceptance of that leadership.
Adam Graycar, really good to talk to you. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.